Good day. I'm here to discuss about the role of hydrology in water resources and planning and management in the Philippines. So the objectives are first, to define the problems on the watershed and mitigation in the Philippines. Second, to cite current problems in watershed management and watershed protection in our country. Third, to define the role of hydrology in water resources planning and management in the Philippines. And the last one is to cite and identify the agencies involved in collection of hydrologic data in the Philippines. So first, let us define what is hydrology. So hydrology is the study of the distribution and movement of water, both on and below the Earth's surface, as well as the impact of human activity on water availability and conditions. So what is water resources planning? So water resource management is the activity of planning, developing, distributing, and managing the optimum use of water resources. It is an aspect of water cycle management. So the effect of climate change. Over the past decades and increasingly, there have been many studies into climate change effects on hydrology and water resources, and some are undertaken on behalf of water management agencies. There are still many gaps and unknowns, however. The goal of this chapter assesses current understanding of the impacts of climate change on water resources and implication for adaptation. What is watershed? A watershed is an area of land that drains or sheds water into a specific water body. So, there are two types of stressor, the human stressors and the natural or climate-induced stressors. So, I think it's discussed in the previous topics. Estimating the impacts of climate change. The impact of climate change on hydrology usually are estimated by defining scenarios for changes in climatic inputs to a hydrological model from the output of general circulation models. So the three key developments here are constructing scenarios that are suitable for hydrological impact assessments, developing and using realistic hydrological models, and understanding better the linkages and feedbacks between climate and hydrological system. So climate model. So the main inputs for climate model are external factors, so-called forcings, that change the amount of sun's energy absorbed by the earth or trapped in the atmosphere. The main output for climate model are normally temperatures and humidity of different atmospheric layers from the surface to the upper stratosphere. So what is hydrologic model? A hydrologic model is a simplification of a real-world system. Examples are surface water, soil water, wetland, groundwater, estuary, that aids in understanding, predicting, and managing water resources. Both the flow and quality of water are commonly studied using hydrologic models. So what is general circulation models? A general circulation model or GCM is a type of climate model. It employs a mathematical model of general circulation of a planetary atmosphere or ocean. It uses the Navier-Stokes equations on a rotating sphere with thermodynamic terms for various energy sources, such as radiation or latent heat. These equations are the basis for computer programs used to simulate the Earth's atmosphere or oceans. Atmospheric and oceanic GCMs, AGCM or OGCM, are key components along with sea ice and land surface components. GCMs and global climate models are used for weather forecasting, understanding the climate, and forecasting climate changes. So, what are the impacts on water resources and hazards? The preceding section have assessed the potential effects of climate changes on river flows, groundwater recharge, and other biophysical components of the water resource base, and demands for that resource. The consequences or impacts of such changes on risk or resources reliability depend not only on the biophysical changes in the stream flow, recharge, sea level rise, and water quality, but also on the characteristic of the water management system. So the following are the societal characteristics that maximize susceptibility to climate change. Includes first, poverty and low income levels, which prevent long-term planning and provisioning of the household level. 2. Lack of water control infrastructures. 3. Lack of maintenance and deterioration of existing infrastructure. 4. Lack of human capital skills for system planning and management. 5. Lack of appropriate empowered institution. 6. Absence of appropriate land use planning. 7. High population densities and other factors that inhibit population mobility. 8. Increasing demand for water because of rapid population growth. 9. Conservative attitudes toward risk, unwillingness to live with some risk as a trade-off against more goods and services. 10. Lack of formal links among the various parties involved in water management.
Agencies involved in the collection of hydrologic data. So we have PAG-ASA, or the Philippine Atmospheric Geophysical Astronomical Services Administration. They are the agencies that collects hydrologic data, and data will be used for weather and flood forecasting and various research projects of the agency around the Philippines. So next we have here the NIA, or the National Irrigation Administration. They are responsible in gathering and reporting water discharge or distribution data. So we have here the NPC, or the National Power Corporation. They are the primary responsible for the collection of stream flow data. Also responsible for managing water resources for power generation and to optimize the use of the power generating assets. So we have here the NAMRIA, or the National Mapping and Resource Information Authority. They are responsible for providing the public and map-making services and acting as the central mapping agency, depository, and distribution facility of natural resources data in the form of maps, charts, text, and statistics. So we have here the NOAA, or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They are the agency that receives the funds for the data collection. Telemetry equipment shall be responsible for its acquisition, installation, operation, and maintenance. And they has the statutory mandate to collect hydrographic data and to provide background data for engineers, scientific, and other commercial and industrial activities. And last, we have here the NWRB, or the National Water Resources Board. They are responsible for ensuring the optimum exploitation, utilization, development, conservation, and providing methods and standards for data collection, project investigation, formulation, planning, design, and feasibility evaluation, and rules and regulation for the exploitation and optimum utilization of water resources.
The last section discussed the problems of watershed management and watershed protection. So the problems that affect watershed are complex and long-term in nature. Watersheds provide essential livelihoods for their inhabitants, but their natural resources are finite, often under pressure and at risk of degradation. Degradation caused by unsustainable exploitation of natural resources is usually the key problem. It leads to poverty, food insecurity, and social conflict. The negative socio-economic consequences of unsustainable resource are significant. In a watershed context, degradation can be described as follows. So what is watershed degradation? It is the loss of value over time, including loss of productive potential of land and water, accompanied by significant changes in the hydrological behavior of river system, which result in the inferior quality, quantity, and timing of the water flow. It is the outcome of the interaction of physiographic features, climate, and poor land use, as well as other human activities. Watershed degradation accelerates ecological degeneration, reduces economic opportunities, and increases social problems. What causes and the symptoms of degradation may vary from country to country, but they do have common traits. These include ecological, socio-economic, technical, institutional issues, which are often interlinked and typically consist of some of the following elements. First one is the ecological. So, I will read some of the given. So, decreasing amount of quality of water resources. So, as time goes by, we use large amount of water. So, parang nauubos din siya. Hindi siya it will take time para mabalik yung amount ng water na yun. So, damages caused by natural disasters. So, ang pinsala din nito ay nakakaapekto rin sa supply ng tubig. So, halimbawa, magkaroon ng landslide. Yung source na pinagkukunan ng tubig is marumi. Hindi na pwedeng inuman, pero parang na-damage na rin siya. At it will take time to para mabalik yun, para mapalitan. So, extensive and rapid deforestation and forest degradation through legal and illegal exploitation, which can reduce the replenishment of groundwater and increase the amount of sediment in surface water. So, it is clear na kumbaga ang sinisira natin ang source ng water na yun. So, kumbaga ang bundok na posibleng pagkunan ng tubig is ay pinapatag para gawing daan. So, ang source ng water ng mga inhabitants doon ay nawawala. So, clearing and conversion of forests mainly into agricultural land use, just like sa the previous. Increased runoff and erosion, siltation and sediment, and so on. When it comes to socio-economic, so rural poverty and uplands causing migration and crowded urban centers. So, pag mayroon tayong mataas na population, meron din tayong mataas na demand sa water. So, minsan, ang mataas na demand sa water ay hindi rin maganda, sapagkat alam naman natin na madali ding maubos ang pinagkukunan natin ng tubig, just like sa pinagkukunan ng mineral. Food insecurity. Degradation of land through improper land use and unsustainable farming, reducing productivity and income. Rapid population growth. So, nakaka-apekto talaga yan. Increasing conflicts over land, forest, and water resources, and etc. So, technical. Poorly planned and executed development activities. Road, housing, mining, recreation, etc. Impairing streams and polluting the natural environment. So, pag mayroong pollution or sinisira natin yung ating natural environment, syempre, maapektuhan din natin dyan ang pinagkukunan natin ng tubig. So, pwedeng hindi na ito malinis, makaapekto sa atin, lalo na sa ating health. Increasing population through use of chemicals, pesticides, and fertilizers, especially on the agricultural sector. So, nakaka-apekto rin po ito sa pinagkukutan natin ng tubig. Changes in river flow regime through construction of dams and for hydropower generation and irrigation storage. Over-abstraction of surface and groundwater, particularly for irrigation. So, institutional. Inadequate access and unclear property rights related to land for resource users. Fragmented legal framework and weak law enforcement. insufficient capacity within administrative system and service providers. National level planning procedures and guidelines do not sufficiently reflect watershed perspective. Inadequate participation of local stakeholders and planning, lack of well-trained personnel and decision-making mechanism at the watershed level, and others. So, when it comes to institutional, nandyan na yung sa ating mga namamahala sa tubig. So, sila rin ay may parte para magkaroon tayo ng sapat na pagkukunan ng tubig. Kaya dapat all na ay knowledgeable sila when it comes to ganitong klaseng topic, when it comes to water demands and sources. So the key challenge for water management. From an organizational or managerial point of view, there are some key challenges for watershed management. First is the impact of management interventions are difficult to assess. So, hindi ang pag-assess ng pagkukunan ng supply ng tubig ay hindi ganoon kadali. So, watershed management addresses issues related to very complex ecological processes. These depend on the large amount of physical parameters that vary in space and time, such as rainfall, intensity, soil, retention capacity, and vegetation types. So, dito, marami talagang dapat pag-aralan at unawain upang malaman kung paano gumagana o kung saan tayo mas makakakuha ng sapat na supply ng tubig. The second one is the areas of decision making are not identical with watersheds. Watersheds are drainage units delineated or by topographic features of the landscape. On the other hand, watershed management is directed at stakeholders and land use systems that are part of administrative units, which do not usually coincide with watershed. Decisions made by stakeholders are usually made with respect to administrative units, provinces, districts, communities, or ecological zones and land tenure units. So the third one is the watershed management has to face competition and even conflicts. So hindi talaga yan maiiwasan when it comes to finding the water supply. So alam naman natin na habang tumatagal ang panahon is lumiliit din ang supply ng ating pinagkukunan ng tubig sapagkat halimbawa na lamang nito ang pagtaas ng populasyon. So nagkakaroon tayo ng competition and even conflict. In addition to that topic is the hydrologically defined. So these are the geographically focused and includes all stressors, air and water. So involves all stakeholders. So what are the stakeholders? This includes public, federal, state, local, and private sectors. It's community-based, includes coordinating framework. And the last one is the strategically addresses priority water resource goal, water quality, and habitat. Integrates multiple programs, regulatory, voluntarily. Is based on sound science, is aided by strategic watershed plans, and uses adaptive management. Thank you.